we as educators need to help when we're doing social justice work, not just uncover things about identity, like we talked about with Zara, but now we need to go even further to describe and help our students hear and see the power dynamics that go with different identities. So you saw glimpses of that in the speech of what the students were talking about, where they were saying, you know, at the beginning, one of the students said, you know, we realized that there are children out there who are not as privileged as us. So that's a starting point of beginning that conversation of how are our identities affording us certain privileges and maybe even causing certain oppression within the dynamics of our society. So that later on, students, you know, in 6th grade, students can begin to think about those power dynamics and, you know, create legislation with people in Washington, D.C. that affects, you know, that affects that marginalized group. But then later on, hopefully, you know, even in an age-appropriate way, students later on could, in older grades, could be able to really address those root causes and help the communities themselves, uplift themselves, and create their own power to address those inequalities later on down the line. So just as a sense of a reminder for us to reflect on how privilege and power is a part of our society, the reflection that we're going to do today is kind of having you look at your own identity and how power and privilege plays a role. So in a minute, I'm going to put up a series of statements on the board, and your responsibility is going to be to read through each one of the statements. And for every statement that is true for you, you are going to take out an M&M and put it at your place. So the first is, I have access to legal help if I need it. I have a savings account in case of emergency. I have taken a vacation outside of the country within the past 3 years. I have never been homeless or evicted from my place of living. I currently have health insurance. I don't have to rely on public transportation to travel to work or school. I can afford my own vehicle. The neighborhood I live in is relatively free of trash, destructive property, or crime. I do not need to worry about the ramifications of disclosing my religious identity to others. I can assume that I will not have to work or go to school on my religious holidays. I can look at the mainstream media and find people of my race represented fairly and in a wide range of roles. If I wanted to, I could travel freely to almost any country. When I apply for jobs, my legal right to work in this country is not questioned. If I have children and a successful career, few people will ask me how I balance my professional and private life. So within these statements, there are a variety of different identities that are attached with them. I imagine that the students probably could have come up with a few more that weren't represented here that would express certain lacks of privileges that the students that they met experienced when they were sharing things like they noticed that a lot of the students were eating processed foods, and maybe that concept of food deserts. And that, you know, a statement up here could be something like, I have access to a market within walking distance from my home, or within 5 minutes driving distance from my home. Things like that. So, you know, depending on what social justice concept you're addressing, you might narrow down this list or focus on certain identities. But the idea here is to recognize that, you know, when you are talking about different identities and different groups, that you also, with social justice work, can then begin to look at and attribute what sort of power dynamics are at play because of those identities in our society. As we kind of now move into some of the last segments of our work together, we've done some exploration, and now I think we wanted to open up for some more dialogue. So what we've done is we've taken a look at some of the equality issues that have been addressed through our different presenters, and we're going to have some focus group conversations that explore a few different questions around social justice in those areas. So we decided to align them with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. These do a very good job of also kind of giving shape to some of the inequalities that you can address through social justice. One of them that we heard a little bit about today was poverty. The text below says, poverty is more than the lack of income and resources to ensure a sustainable livelihood. Its manifestations include hunger and malnutrition, limited access to education and other basic services, social discrimination and exclusion, as well as the lack of participation in decision-making. The second overarching concept that will be a focus group will be peace, justice, and strong institutions. The promotion of peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, the provision of access to justice for all, and building effective, accountable institutions at all levels. The third focus group option will be respecting each other's individuality. And that we kind of set as sort of that idea of equal rights, but from more of an individual's perspective versus a societal perspective. And so one statement from the UN about that one, that is not actually a sustainable goal, one of their sustainable goals, but we felt it was important to address here today. And so in one of their statements, they did comment that in the name of our shared humanity, to unite, encourage, and resolve against intolerance. And to help you kind of move through the process, we're going to give you some focus group questions to talk about with these topics as the umbrella. You're going to get to use the tree map on your table to have a note taker to sort of write down your ideas. The roots of the tree are going to be the issues that come up for you, and the branches of the tree are going to be some of the outcomes and solutions and ideas and resources that you come up with around those issues. How do we address personal, school, and societal barriers that inhibit this area of social justice work in our classrooms, in our schools, and whatnot? To help guide our conversations, there are Legos in the center of your table. This is to help us remind ourselves to share the air a little bit when we're talking. And so everybody can take a Lego out of the middle of the table, and that will be like your talking piece. And once you've said something, you can put your label in the center of the table, and over time, after everybody adds in their Legos and has had a chance to speak and share, then we'll have something that we've built together.